Wow. We are here, everyone, with, well, let me just flip right over here right now so you guys can see what we're talking about. This is it right here. So Canada to stabilize growth and decrease number of new international student permits issued to approximately 360,000 for 2024. This is just the tip, the absolute tip of the iceberg, everyone. I know you're all here wondering, what's going to happen. We've got Minister Miller here. And I also want to point out that I'm going to be sharing a little bit of information from his live presentation that he did. But I want to start off with one thing, Minister Miller. Why in the world did you guys quietly, secretly do this without the big fanfare like you always do? Well, I think the answer is everybody knows. It's because this is not good news. It is not. And, well, good news for anyone who's looking to come to immigrate to Canada, anyone who's looking to come and study in Canada, anyone who wants to have their spouse come with them on a spousal open work permit to study, to work while you're studying. The reduction in numbers are going to be quite devastating for some colleges and from programs that traditionally have been heavily weighted with international students, which I want to start off right now, everyone, with saying I'm not going to make any comments whatsoever on whether or not this is right or wrong. I've been following many of my colleagues across the country on X and listening to their comments, and I am not here in any way, shape, or form to say whether this is good or bad or ugly. Yes, do I have my own opinions? Yes. Do you have your opinions? I know you do, and I welcome them. I welcome to see what your questions are. I know we've got a bunch of people that are tuning in here. Let's drop the minister off of our screen here so that we can see the comments. Go ahead. I want to hear what your comments are on this. I will get to them in just a little bit, but thanks for connecting in, all you guys that are watching this live. But the reality is right now, Minister Miller right here made a significant announcement this morning, just hot off the press. I know there's been lots of little tweets that have been posted out there. People have made comments. People have gone on and done some shorts, all those kinds of things. But what we're talking about today, we're going to hit on the high points, but then we're going to talk about the impact that this is going to have on anyone, not only looking to come to study in Canada, but what this impact is going to have on express entry. And I'll be honest, I am always and will always be a glass is half full kind of guy. And so for many of you who've been just wondering if there's ever a future for you to be able to immigrate to Canada when you're outside of Canada, this is going to have a very positive effect for you. Over the last number of years, well, really since express entry first started, and then they started to grant fewer points for LMIAs, I should say, those of you who started from the very beginning of express entry will remember that they granted 600 points. That's 600 points for anyone who had an LMIA, whether or not you were a food service supervisor or the executive of a large company. You'd get 600 points, which would guarantee that you're going to get an ITA. Well, over time, they realized, wait a minute, our executives of our big companies, they're old fogies and they're losing all the age points. So they're actually not, and maybe they came over on an intercompany transfer. They're not getting enough points. And so they made the decision to change it, to reduce it down to 50 for everybody else except the high tiers. And over time, they've gradually changed what constitutes the comprehensive ranking system and the criteria. They've added points for siblings in Canada. More recently, French has dominated the world. And so people are looking, well, I'm English speaking. Do I not have any opportunity of immigrating to Canada? And in most cases, if you only had human capital, you had great education, great language ability, your age was great, you had 3 years of foreign work experience, who cares? At this stage, the world that this minister created, as well as his predecessor, the current minister Miller, well, you are worthless, right? You were worthless. You had no ability, excuse me, to actually immigrate to Canada. But what's happened now, you guys, what's happened is that this is going to have a significant impact on the comprehensive ranking system scores in the future. We will not see an immediate drop in CRS scores for the simple reason that we've got freaking hundreds of thousands of people who are on open work permits now. And so what's going to have to happen is those individuals in Canada have to transition through permanent residence, or those who have lower scores are not going to be able to become permanent residents and will have to leave Canada. And the new individuals that are coming in, there will be more room for them. The scores will continue to reduce. And my hope is that individuals who are looking to immigrate to Canada in the following years will have a pathway forward on human capital alone, because these very, very blunt tools that the minister here has implemented and will be implementing will have a huge impact on the use of international studies for the purposes of creating what the minister described as a backdoor to immigration programming. And that's really what it has been, right? This is why all of these schools have come up. And what I want to do is I want to share right off the bat from the minister's own discussion, before we get into the specific details, I want to share with you just a little bit about his rationale. Now, he was asked about what the impact of this will have following the 2-year suspension. And maybe let's just jump back here just quickly. I just want to point this out. So they always start off with a nice little, we love students, when in reality, they've now placed a lot of, I'm not going to say total blame, but you know, this government, they did this. So you can see right here in this press release, it says to stabilize new growth, they're going to set an intake cap right here for a period of 2 years. For 2024, the cap is expected to result in approximately 360,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023. And essentially, they're going to start implementing that for this calendar year. But what I want to do is I want to give you a little bit more background into why the minister is doing this. So listen up.
Well, look, we've got 2 years to actually get the ship in order. It's a bit of a mess, and it's time to rein it in. So.
Okay, I just want to stop right there. He says we've got 2 years to figure out what's going to happen. The program is a bit of a mess. Okay, now remember, where did that mess come from? And I'm not going to put the blame squarely on, former Minister Fraser, who touted that he loved international students. They were so important. It started way back with his predecessor, Minister Medicino. Okay, now unfortunately, Minister Miller is the one that's having to do all the bad news and the damage control. But let's find out what's driving all of this. Okay,
this is something we will, these are, even though we put a lot of thought into this, these are still pretty much blunt measures from the federal government. We're playing with taps that we're turning on and turning off and allocating between province. So did we get it right? We'll see. But we need to work with provinces in the meantime to make sure that they are doing their jobs. There have been provincial Auditor General reports that have laid out in much more detail than I could lay out to you here today. The measures need to be taken to make sure that this is a system that has some integrity to it.
Now I'm going to stop this. So once again, the federal government is saying, look, the provinces allowed this to happen as well by approving all of these garbage schools. These ones that are basically study permit mills who charge outrageous amounts of money and exploit you. And so the government is saying, look, the provinces have a responsibility to bear for what they have done. Now, there are absolutely good schools that are going to be caught by these measures. And like the minister said, they are working with the provinces. He also alluded to the fact that they warned them in the fall that they needed to do something. And he also suggested, which I'm not going to play the clip, is that the provinces didn't do enough fast enough to curb these study permit mills, these ones that they granted educational charters, because remember, education is a provincial matter. And so it's a joint kind of partnership between the federal government, who grants the study permits for international students to come, and the provinces who designate the learning institutions. So this is also on the provinces. So 50% of international students in Ontario, well, are those students, all those schools that are bringing in all of these students, they were granted authorization by the province. So that's what the minister's talking about. Okay, let's listen a little bit more. Listen in here.
It is not the intention of this program to have sham commerce degrees or business degrees that are sitting on top of a massage parlor that someone doesn't even go to, and then they come into the province and drive an Uber. If you need a dedicated channel for Uber drivers in Canada, I can design that, but that isn't the intention of an international student program. So,
do you hear that? So this is what we're getting at. We're getting at bad actors. We're getting at people who've created these sham schools They have somehow gotten approval as DLIs to offer work permits. And he specifically identified these aren't fake scenarios he's creating, like real situations where school's on top of a massage parlor. There's no real school. The individual is then driving Uber to support himself. And the minister says, look, if we wanted a program for Uber drivers, I can design that. But this program, international students, is not designed for that purpose. And I'll be honest, you guys, international studies were also not designed as a pathway to permanent residence. They were designed for individuals to come study. But unfortunately, over the years, people that have a stake in this, that have money to be made, both the schools that are created, the education agents who are raking in bucks for convincing you to come study, and even you who are desperate for a pathway to permanent residence and will do whatever it takes to get there, it's all created this crazy situation. And for years, Canada's education system was ranked at the highest. And what's happening now is that it's being tarnished. And you can see all of you who are stuck here with no pathways forward, who have useless degrees from schools that really, like identified commerce degrees, that are not helping you to get any kind of a decent job and a decent pathway to permanent residence. You've been sold a bill of goods. And this is what we're talking about right now. It is so disappointing to see all this playing out. But let's listen a little bit more to what the minister said, and then we'll get into the details.
This is something we need to rein in. If they exist, those institutions need to be shut down, and it's up to the provinces to do so.
Did you hear that? These institutions need to be shut down, and it's up to the provinces. Okay, and you can hear the frenzy of reporters.
17% are registered. Is your government concerned about the economic impact this will have on public universities and colleges?
Okay, now he says, a reporter says, well, what's your government's, are you aware of the economic impact this could have on schools? Let's hear what the minister has to say.
We are, absolutely. This has been very, very lucrative. And it's certainly something that private colleges have made a lot of money out of. Again,
Do you hear this? This is very lucrative, and private colleges have made a lot of money out of this. And that has been a huge embarrassment for the government.
Not the Minister of Post-Secondary Education underfunding, the Minister of Immigration. And clearly, in the last decade or so, even longer, post-secondary institutions in Canada have been underfunded by provinces. And these institutions are smart, and they've gone and they've seen that they can get tuition fees that are 4 or 5 times more than what my kids pay at McGill or Acadia, and they've made money off it. They haven't necessarily provided the student experience that was promised that these people have brought in, and there's been the path of least resistance as well. The source countries are not particularly diverse.
Okay, listen to this. The source countries are not particularly diverse. We've heard this before. Minister Fraser made those comments before. He talked about the fact that some source countries are really dominating the ranks of international students. Why? Because they have a substantial middle class that can afford these higher fees. And when schools are charging outrageous $40,000 tuitions or whatever it is for 1 year of useless commerce degree above a massage parlor, well, understand that this is the issue they're trying to stamp out. Now, my curiosity is with this high expectation for having funds and the ability to support your studies, which they've ratcheted up as the minimums, how are you going to solve this issue? How are you going to create more diversity if only certain countries citizens from those countries can actually afford to study? It's a program of the elite, but people have to be able to show that when they come to study, it is truly for temporary purposes, something that we've said for years, but unfortunately has gone kind of by the wayside as all these creative consultants and, lawyers, even myself, when I'm advising people, how do you qualify for express entry? Well, if you don't have an ability to qualify immediately, you look at studying. Well, this is going to change. This is going to change. Let's listen a little bit more.
And banking on looking at the global middle class, upper middle class, and people have made money off it. So it's a system that has some real integrity issues. It has ecosystem incentives and perverse incentives, and it's something that we need to address. And then there's clear instances of people that have been just making money hand over fist about this. But again, we don't want our best top academic institutions to be penalized. It's why we have exemptions for master's and PhD students, because those.
Okay, so you hear that. So they have exemptions for master's and PhD students. So our top tier schools they've exerted a lot of pressure on the government not to mess up with their programs. So they've carved out exceptions for these masters and PhD. But it's the lower level schools, the ones that are private, that are in partnership with other schools, that are the ones that they're targeting, the ones where the majority of the student body is international students. Those are the programs that are being targeted.
those are the bright people that we need to retain. And now you will hear from some provinces quite clearly that there are some trade schools that they will want to exempt or give postgraduate work permits to, because that is where some of the needs are, whether it's in nursing or healthcare or in construction. But what I say to them is we'll work with them, and we'll work with them to get this done.
So did you hear that? So he says, okay, yes, master's, PhD, but we will work with schools where they're actually graduating students in trades, healthcare, in areas where we really need people. And there's going to be a direct connection between education and meeting labor market shortages. So there's so much more to come, you guys. This is not the end of it. There's so much more to come. And I think we'll stop there. And I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I welcome your comments. So please post those comments, and then I'll jump back, and we're going to go 1 hour. I'm not going to have as much time to answer questions because I'm right literally in the midst of a number of client reviews, consultations. I had to reschedule one consultation in order to do this, but this is groundbreaking. This stuff, you guys, is drastically going to impact immigration in Canada going forward. It absolutely will. Not only the international student program, there's going to be a ton of overseas agents, consultants, and lawyers who make their money off of these programs that are going to be very, very sad today. There's going to be a ton of people out of work. And like I said, I'm not passing any comments or judgment on that. I'm just going to tell you this is the world we live in, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do to move forward. All right, let's and there's a lot of people asking a lot of questions, but let's go back right now. I want to talk about this news release specifically. And this is often they'll pull out the high points they think are high, but I want to go through this with you. It's not large, okay? It's not huge. So we're just going to go through this very quickly so that you can see what the government is pushing out. And then I'm going to flip back to some other comments that Minister Miller made that I pulled out watching this live. I decided not to do it as a watch party because you can see this was launched this morning, like 5 hours ago. It was way earlier than most people would have been up. And this is another thing that kind of irritates me a little bit because, Minister, why do you do that? Why, when you got some big thing you're going to promote, well, it's advertised. It's like, I didn't get any email notification this time that they were going to do this. This is quietly done, I think, in the minister's riding itself. And so you can always go and you can watch this. It's on YouTube, but I'll be honest, like this, and it's on the CPAC channel. You can see right here. But they, anytime there's negative news, and this is horribly negative for anyone who's in the midst of this world, it's just quiet, right? Quiet. Okay, let's take a look at this, what this news release says. So once again, they always start out with a preamble that says, "We love you." So international students enrich our communities and are a critical part of Canada's social, cultural, and economic fabric. This, you guys, is true. No one at all ever would discount this. However, the issue, once again, is money grubbing, freaking useless, corrupt people who are, how did the minister describe them? He described them as bad actors that don't have the best interests of Canada at heart, who attempt to game the system. Okay. And that's essentially what the minister was addressing. He was talking about fly-by-night operations and backdoor institutions to Canada. And those are the ones that the minister they're really trying to crack down on. And whenever there's money to be made, whenever there's an unbelievable demand for a product, which permanent residence in Canada is, then there's going to be someone there to exploit, to take advantage, and to really just destroy every freaking good program we've had. I'm serious. Like, it's so frustrating for me. I could go through an unbelievably long list of things, you guys, of good, great programs that were broken and busted apart because of corruption. I look at our investor programs, our entrepreneur programs at the federal level that were all shut down, I think, in 2011. Why? Because they had an inability to actually manage and verify and vet and assess, whether there was fraud involved. You look even at our provinces, and I know that sometimes the provinces, in order to try to manage these entrepreneur programs, it just becomes almost unwieldy to the point where they don't even run the programs. Like Ontario recently suspended theirs. Well, they hadn't hardly been doing anything anyways, because it's so hard to manage, to weed out the corrupt, to weed out those who are fraudulent, who are trying to exploit. And now we're in a world where international studies here in Canada was something globally respected, where now it's because of corrupt, just bad actors, like the minister said, they've now hurt what really was and tarnished what really was one of the bright shining lights of our country. So that's okay. Now we move forward. Okay, let's take a look again here, and let's see what's in here. And I don't know how many people are actually going through this, but I like to go to the source, as you guys have seen. I hate just people putting their own spin on things. Let's take a look at it ourselves, and you formulate your own opinions, okay? So you can see here, in recent years, the integrity of the system has been threatened. Some institutions have significantly increased their intakes to drive revenue. Money. And more students have been arriving in Canada without the proper supports they need to succeed. Exactly. And one of the supports is housing. And with the high numbers of not just international students, but our through our refugee programs, through our settlement, through our special measures that we have, there are just tons of people that are coming into Canada, and they need a place to live, okay? Rapid increases in numbers of international students arriving in Canada puts pressure on what's first on the list, housing. Let's expand this a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better, okay? So once again, housing right off the top, healthcare, and other services. So as we work to better promote international students from, once again, bad actors and support sustainable population growth in Canada, remember, when we look at all of this, remember we have a minister here and we have a follow-up minister here, okay? And I could put in here Minister Medicino as well. All of these high numbers of for our human capital, basically our annual levels plans. Understand, I have no issue with the annual levels plans. And just so that you guys can understand how this works, I'm going to pull this up here. Let's see if we can find the 2023, that's 2025. Let's go back. I'm just going to pull up the annual levels plans for 2024. Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can pull it up here. Just give me a second. There's so many links here, and I want to make sure I'm pulling from the right place here. There, nope, supplementary information. Let's see if we can find it. There we go. Okay. All right, let's slide over here. I just want to show you. Okay, and we can drop the ministers off here. Okay, so for the annual levels plans, I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so for these annual levels plans that they have for 2024, I have absolutely no issues with a target of 485,000, and in particular for the federal high skilled in the economic classes, no issues with a target of 281,135 landed immigrants. But the problem that we have right now, and the thing that the minister is trying to address here, let's see if we can expand this up again, is that the influx of temporary residents has been so rapid and such of a high number that now it's putting impossible strain on housing, healthcare, and other services, let alone the corruption that exists. Okay, so they're going to try to sort out the bad actors. So Minister Miller, okay, those of you who are kind of new to the game, this is Minister Miller right here. This is what he's indicated. All right. So they announced as of today that the government will set intake caps on international student permit applications to stabilize new growth for a period of 2 years. So what that means is they're going to reduce the number of approvals. Those of you who have been approved, who are already here over the last 3 years, 1 million of you will be allowed to continue forward, complete your education, and get your degrees. Okay, but please understand, there is no guarantee that you will have a pathway to permanent residence. And over the next little while, here on the Canadian Immigration Institute, we're going to talk about strategies to increase your chances of being able to get an ITA or one of those limited spots that we have listed here. Remember, with the economic immigration programs, there's 110,770 for essentially express entry. And then if we go down here, you'll see that there's also 110,000 for the PNPs. There are other programs that you need to be aware of that are going to fill in the ranks. The TR to PR pathway, you can see here. This is the interesting thing. You can see the federal economic public policies. This is the TR to PR pathway. And there's none allocated for 2024 because this year here, well, I shouldn't say none. At a high, there could be 3,000 that are still waiting to be processed, but this is gone. So all of them have been shifted back to the federal high skilled. So these are the economic programs that are available. Be aware of them, educate yourself. And these are the pathways outside of just express entry right here. Okay. So the cap's expected to result in 360,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023. And then you can see here in the spirit of fairness, which is absolutely, it's fair. When you've spent all this money to come over, they're not just going to pull the rug out from underneath you. Individuals, provincial, and territorial caps have been established. So what this means is that provinces will be weighted. And it means that depending upon the population in those provinces, that's how many allocations for study permits will be granted. It will result in much more significant decreases in provinces where international student populations have seen the most sustainable growth. Now, we know that Ontario and British Columbia have traditionally seen the vast majority of international students go there. Now, I shouldn't say that. Quebec obviously is on the radar, but for these purposes, we're talking at least specifically about the total numbers being spread out across the provinces on a per capita basis on the populations. And you can see here, just to reiterate, all of you that are here, study permit renewals will not be impacted. Okay, so this is really, really good for you guys that are wondering, well, what does the future hold for me? I'm in the middle of my studies. You're not going to be negatively impacted, okay? At least from the standpoint of being able to continue. However, what does this mean? And you have to read through the lines. What does it mean when it says there's going to be weighted? What that means is that some provinces are actually going to get more allocations for study permits than provinces that have traditionally seen the vast majority of students go there. And you know, it's hard because I talked about this over a year ago. I don't know how many people really identified it, but when we're talking about this, the top 6, I think it was the video I did on the top 6 takeaways from the ministers. Oh, I can't even remember. Let's see. I think it's on my YouTube channel. Actually, the website maybe. Top 6 takeaways. Okay, minister. Let's see. Is it here? Okay, this is my top 6 takeaways. It's this one here. But I think I want to go to my blog post. Okay, so this was September 2022. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to, hopefully it's going to pull it up. Okay, so this was this minister, okay, Minister Fraser. There was a big push. Well, what are you going to do, minister, about transitioning all of the temporary residents to permanent residents? Well, this here, this actual strategy here, excuse me, what a major flop. It is a major flop. But here's my top 6 takeaways. We talked about key sectors, right? And that's where the categories. And remember, this blog post that I did was done back in September 21st of 2022, I think, over a year ago. And so I'd encourage you guys to take a look at it because now it's starting to come to fruition. Job offers will be more plentiful and essential. So obviously there's a downturn in the economy. So there's more, there's an upgrade in the economy, which is resulting in more companies being able to apply for LMIAs. We've seen that in our own office. But what I want to go to, I think, is number 6. Okay, no, I do want to touch on rural Canada is on the rise. What that means is provinces that don't have as larger centers like Manitoba, maybe Saskatchewan, even Alberta to some extent, could potentially even see an increase in international students. French language ability, bang, we saw that. But this is what I want to show you, okay? And you can see this whole thing was all about, and part of the reason, if I jump back here to here, this is why I said it's not all fluff. You can probably see from that little thumbnail, it's not all fluff. Why is it not all fluff? Because embedded in here was exactly what they're doing right now, okay? International students must be strategic about where they are studying in Canada. And I said here, tucked away quietly within the report was an acknowledgement of a lack of diversity within the ranks of international students. Does that sound familiar? Is that not what Minister Miller just said, a lack of diversity? So they're looking for ways to diversify source countries for the program. This was over a year ago. They knew this was happening. It just took them time to roll out these changes, and their hand was really forced by all the negative press. So this is code for we're going to start approving less study permits from India, China, and more from other countries, which is entirely possible, including caps at visa offices. So much more than ever, students need to be strategic with their school selection. Don't just go to whatever school is the cheapest and easiest to gain admission. Okay, I was warning you guys about this way back then. Okay, way back then I was warning you about this. And for goodness sake, do not study in one-year programs unless you intend to stack that program with a second 1 year. You need 2 years to maximize your postgrad. Well, in some cases, this may no longer be even an option for you. And then finally, pay attention to where your school is located and what you're choosing to study. IRCC has made it clear that they want students to choose programs of study outside the major urban centers. Yes, indeed. And, and here's what I said here. I can't help but think that IRCC will bake this ingredient into their advanced analytics when assessing study permits. There are other factors at play. However, if IRCC says they're going to incentivize students to look beyond major urban centers when choosing a program of study, I listen. You should study too. So you can see this is exactly what they're talking about. This is how they're now doing it. They're saying, okay, well, we're only going to allow so many to certain provinces. And if you are looking to study in one province that is hitting their cap really quickly, well, by its very nature, it's going to force you to look to a different province. Okay. So it'll result in a significant decrease in provinces where international student populations has seen the most unsustainable growth. Okay. Ontario, British Columbia, you are on the list. Study permit renewals, like I said, won't be impacted. And if you're pursuing a master's or doctorate and any elementary or minor children studying, it won't be included in the cap. And once again, current study permit holders will not be affected. So you guys out there can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief that if the ones that are here, you can breathe a little bit, okay? Because this isn't going to shut you down. It's not. But still, it doesn't change this. It doesn't change the fact that these strategies that Minister talked about, these strategies to expand transitions to permanent residency, just have not materialized because the numbers of people coming and studying in Canada have completely outstripped the capacity for the provinces to absorb them as permanent residents, for IRCC to be able to absorb them under the economic PR programs. All right. So you can see once again, they'll allocate a portion of the cap to each province, who will then distribute the allocation among their DLI. So the federal government, all they're going to do is just say, okay, and Ontario, you have, and this is something I'll point out, the minister specifically stated in the Q&A portion, he specifically stated that Ontario could expect a 50% reduction in the number of study permits issued for 2024. We don't even know about 2025. They could choose to do it even less in 2025, which would not surprise me at all. But 2024, Ontario can expect 50% less study permit allocations compared to what they've received in the past. And British Columbia is going to be close to that as well. The only reason they didn't ask about BC was because, well, someone didn't ask. That's why the minister didn't talk about it. So the cap, you can say, it will be implemented as of January the 22nd, 2024. Today. That's today, folks. Every student permit application submitted will also require an attestation letter from a province or territory. So all I can say is I sure hope that they've got those attestation letters all sorted out. You remember in the fall, they had talked about the need for provinces to have these in place. So that attestation letter is going to be the way in which the province and the school assures that they're not issuing more than they have a quota to fill. So provinces and territories are expected to establish a process for issuing attestation letters to students by no later than March 31st, 2024. Well, my goodness, then what about all of the people that are applying for study permits from January 22nd to March 31st? What the heck's the process? There has to be some mechanism in place between these two dates. So we'll see how that plays out. Stay tuned. All right. Now, once again, you can see here that they are, I can't see this being temporary, not short-term temporary. This is going to be a prolonged shift in study permit processing. But in order to try not to, to be too draconian, they say these temporary measures will be put in place for 2 years, and the number of new study permit applications that will be accepted in 2025 will be reassessed at the end of this year. So maybe for 2024, they're reducing it to 360. In 2025, you guys, they could very well choose to reduce it down to 250,000 if they wanted to. So they will be revisiting it at the end of the year. All right. And remember, who are they going after? They're going after those private schools. Well, let's just keep going, okay? Let's keep going. So during this period, the government of Canada will continue to work with provinces and territories, designated learning institutions, and national education stakeholders on developing a sustainable path forward for international students. And then listen to this, including finalizing and a recognized institutional framework. Apparently, they had no freaking plan. We just let people in if they qualify, and the schools are DLIs and they issue the acceptance letters, good enough for us. Well, that was not a solution for long-term sustainability. So they want to ensure that post-secondary institutions are able to provide adequate levels of student housing. Well, that's a huge issue all across Canada right now. I think of my daughter right now even in Lethbridge, our small little town here in southern Alberta. She's getting married next month, and her fiance, we looked all over the place to try to find a basement suite for her and her future husband to move into. And it took a lot of work. And finally we found a place that was really kind of crummy, but we finally found one, but it was probably $500 more expensive than it would have been even a year and a half ago, all because of the pressures on the housing market. And international students are not solely responsible for housing problems. They're not. Do they play a part? It would be disingenuous to say they have no impact. That's not the case. Of course they do. But we've got, 1 million, COET work permits, open work permits that were approved. How many have actually come? I don't know, 200,000-300,000 from Ukraine. We've got Iranian open work permits. We've got from Hong Kong. We've got all of these different programs that are designed to bring people in that float underneath the annual levels plan. And because of that, it kind of caught them off guard. I think no one was fully paying attention to what the impact that this was having on housing in Canada. So now the schools have to make sure that there's adequate housing. And if there isn't, they're simply not going to have an opportunity to get allocations for the school. Okay, now listen to this. So in order to better align the post-grad work permit program, this is something that is massively devastating for anyone who was relying on their spouse to come work in Canada and help support them while they went through school. Remember, you really only need to show funds for the first year, technically, of studies. Then you have the ability to work full-time off campus, during the regular breaks and up to, there's obviously policy is in place right now to allow for more flexible work. But the rule generally is 20 hours during studies and then full-time and regular schedule breaks. Well, now for most, there are some exceptions. We'll get to them. There will be no such thing as a spousal open work permit for spouses of individual studying in programs that are not master's or a PhD program. And I'm positive that there's going to be other carve-outs for the programs where they really want, like you could see, they talked about trades, they talked about healthcare. I could easily seeing them carve out exceptions for spouses in those, but it's going to be really, really challenging. So starting September the 1st, so not right now, but starting September the 1st, international students who begin a study program, so this is the September intake, that is part of a curriculum arrangement, so a curriculum licensing arrangement, will no longer be eligible for a post-grad work permit upon graduation. So this is full stop. These are these schools where they've seen a high rate of exploitation, corruption. These are the ones that the minister described as being fly-by-night operations, backdoor institutions to Canada, those kinds of things. And those are the minister's own words right from this news release that he did. So understand what this means. Under curriculum licensing agreements, students physically attend a private college that has been licensed to deliver the curriculum of an associated public college. So you can see how the scam is. So they're licensed under a public college to provide the curriculum, to deliver it. But they've seen that the quality of this education has been way, way below what it should have been. And so these programs have seen significant growth in attracting international students in recent years, though they have less oversight, right, than the public colleges, and they act as a loophole with regards to post-grad work permit eligibility. So because these curriculum licensed schools are associated with the public, they can get by referral a post-grad work permit eligibility. And now they're shutting all of that down. So no. And that's going to virtually shut these schools down, because the only reason people ever go to these schools is for hope of getting a post-grad work permit. So these schools are going to be crushed. And once again, I'm not passing judgment. There was a time when I made some comments that got me a lawsuit threatened against me, because there's big money in this. And so I'm not going to pass judgment on this. I'm just telling you the facts. Okay. Now, pay attention. Graduates of master's and other short graduate level programs will soon be eligible to apply for the 3-year work permit. So under the current criteria, the length of a post-grad work permit is based solely on the length of the individual study program, hindering master's graduates by limiting the amount of time they have to gain work experience and potentially transition to permanent residence. So there, you can see here, there may actually be a positive uptake. You may do a master's program that maybe is a little bit less than normal, like a 2-year program, potentially. Other short graduate levels may be shorter, but they may be eligible to get a 3-year work permit. So we'll have to see how this plays out, but that could be a positive bonus. In the weeks ahead, open work permits will only be available to spouses of international students in master's and doctoral programs. The spouses of international students in other levels, including undergraduate and college programs, this is the kicker, will no longer be eligible. Now, at this stage, I don't see anything that says existing spouses of students in here will be grandfathered in, but I have to assume that that's the case. They're not just going to refuse to grant open work permits for people that are currently studying. I have to assume that it's going to be as of January 22nd, right now, today, that they'll implement this, and you can see that. Spouses will no longer be eligible. So I have to assume as of today. And the important measures announced today complement other recently announced reforms that was in the fall. So taken together, they aim to ensure genuine students receive the support they require and have the resources they need, like a place to live, for an enriching study experience in Canada, not going to one of these, they call them these private colleges that are licensed to deliver the curriculum of an associated public college. And you can see they've specifically identified college and college here. Okay. While at the same time, stabilizing the overall numbers of students arriving and alleviating pressure on, once again, housing, healthcare, and other social services. Okay. And then here's a quote from Mr. Miller. International students, once again, are vital to Canada. So he says, look, we are, and let's pull them up here, because these are his words here. Let's pull them up. Slide over here with me, Minister. Okay. He says, international students are vital to Canada and enrich our communities. That is true. We have an obligation to ensure that they have access to the resources they need for an enriching academic experience. That is true. In Canada today, this isn't always the case. That is true, right? And so today they're announcing additional measures to protect a system that has become so lucrative that it has opened a path for its abuse. That is at the source of all of this. Enough is enough. Through the decisive measures announced today, we're striking the right balance for Canada. I don't know yet if this is the right balance, but he can say whatever he wants, and ensuring the integrity of our immigration system while setting students up for success, the success that they hope for. Okay, couple key takeaway facts, and then we'll drop off. Okay, and then we'll get back to some questions here. So in the coming months, they'll continue to work to provide clear pathways to PR for students with, once again, in-demand skills. If your skills are not in demand, what are those in-demand skills? Well, back September 21st of 2022, I highlighted those in my blog post. And once again, you can watch that video. It's one of the more popular videos on my YouTube channel. But in the sectors, you can see, right? Health, hospitality, transportation, trades, IT, engineering's under STEM, agri-food, agriculture, construction, Okay. The trades, professional services, scientific and technical services. So you can see all of these are encompassed in those category-based draws that we have for express entry. Okay. Let's just go here quickly. And I'm just going to go to the rounds of invitation. And we're going to go here. And once again, you can see, find out the category-based rounds of invitations, how they work. If we go back, we can look historically at the levels right here. And you can see the rounds of invitations for these category-based draws: agriculture, agri-food, transport, trade, STEM, French, healthcare. Okay. You can see all of these in here are dominating the rounds of invitations. Now, with that being said, we still have general. And some people are asking, will the scores come down? 546 is freaking insane. Well, obviously, as the hugely ballooned numbers of post-grad work permit holders and those in Canada on open work permits, as those start to drop, these will drop as well. And although you can see the general type right here, you can see 542, these were lower numbers. And if we go back, they did, 4,750 is still large, and it was still high because there was such a big gap, October 26th to December 6th. That's why these numbers were so high. But if we go down further and then to the no program specified draw in October, they had done a bunch of no program specified relatively close together, which does push the scores down lower. So just keep that in mind. Okay. So continuing to go through here. All right. So, and you can see here, they are exploring, so with students in demand skills, and explore new measures to better transition international students to the labor force. The world is not over, okay, for international students. They see the importance of international students as a part of this quota that they've allocated here as a part of our total economic admissions each year. They see international students continuing to play a critical role. And so what the minister is saying here is that they are continuing to look at future options, because right now what's happening is not working. And why they have not done a Canadian experience class draw, a CEC only draw, I don't know. I don't know why they haven't, I'll be honest. The department has introduced several measures recently to make sure international student program works for incoming students as well as the country as a whole. And so these were announced before, if you remember, on January the 1st, the cost of living requirement was increased. And this is a huge, huge step because it's going to make it even more difficult for individuals that are coming from, less economically well-off countries to be able to qualify. You pretty much need to be independently wealthy in those countries to be able to come. So all provinces except Quebec. So before January, you can see if it was a student, it was just $10,000. But now, as of January the 1st, that has rocketed up to double, $20,635 for an individual. And the interesting thing is, will people choose to bring their family now? Will this even matter with 2, 3, 4? If your spouse can't get an open work permit, they're going to be more likely wanting to stay home and continue to work to support you if you're married, because they can't come here and just chill. They could come and apply as a visitor, but boy, you'd need to have funds to support yourself, and it's going to drastically reduce that market. So those who are applying for study permits, open study permits for, study permits and open work permits for accompanying spouses, this market's all going to be shot down, all of it. All right. Okay. And to reflect the true cost of living. And that is true. It's way more expensive than when they first set up that $10,000 rule. Largely that's attributed to housing costs. So it's not surprising that they would increase it. And you can see they've done this to help prevent student vulnerability and exploitation. What do they mean by that? Okay, what do they mean by increasing the cost is going to help to prevent student vulnerability and exploitation? Well, if you come over here, okay, and you do not have sufficient funds to support yourself, you're going to be willing to do whatever it takes to get money to pay for your tuition, including working without authorization or working for a company at drastically lower rates than, wages than any person would agree to work for in Canada. So be aware of those things. Be aware of them. All right, let's jump back and let's finish this up. So since December 1st, you can see the DLIs have been required to confirm every letter of acceptance submitted by an applicant outside Canada directly with IRCC. And if we go back to the rollout you can see one of the things they talked about was, let's see here if I can find it, was the need for the actual attestation from the province. I can't remember where it is here. So you can see before they had to provide, basically they had to confirm every acceptance letter, which was because of the fraud. There were acceptance letters that were being fabricated and scammed and they weren't genuine. And so they required each school to confirm it. Now there's this attestation from the province that says, yeah, we've got room for this student within our quota. That's coming to be implemented in March. But once again, what does people do between January and March? We don't know yet. So enhanced verification was used to protect prospective students from fraud because there was all of that negative publicity because of the fraudulent cases, all those Indian international students. Based on only genuine letters of acceptance. And then in 2024, we intend to implement targeted pilots aimed at helping underrepresented cohorts of international students pursue their studies in Canada. So what does that mean? These pilots, potentially, I think it means that there's going to be mechanisms in place to try to create that diversity that the minister was talking about, that they want amongst the various places. Okay, so that's at least from my perspective, that's a super high level. Now we can spend a lot of time talking about these issues and whether or not they're right, whether or not, the minister, whether or not Minister Miller here struck the right balance. We can talk about that till the cows come home, as we say in Southern Alberta. But what difference does it make? Who cares? It is what it is. And now you guys have to make decisions on how you're going to govern yourself. And I've said this so many times. Every time I have, let me get rid of that. Got a little bit carried away there. I hid the wrong one. Here, we'll hide the minister. Just like I've talked about repeatedly, over and over again, you have to consider living outside the provinces of Ontario and British Columbia if you have a chance of getting permanent residence. Full stop. So those provinces have far less competition. If you can secure jobs there, there's going to be increased pathways for permanent residence through the PNPs because there's simply not as many people competing for those spots. But many of you still have to realize that there is a chance that you may not be able to have or find a pathway to permanent residence by the time your postgrad work permit expires, or your 18-month extension of your postgrad work permit, which the minister, once again, has specifically stated they will not do another one. So those of you who have given everything you can to stay here and are now in a position where, there's no pathway to permanent residence, do not choose to stay and go out of status. Do not do it. If you comply, you will leave the opportunity open to be able to potentially secure a job later on and be able to get a work permit. You will have the ability to go home and maybe get those extra 3 years of work experience, or study French, or do other things to give yourself still an opportunity or a chance. Because remember, for Canadian work experience, yes, to qualify for the Canadian experience class, the work experience needs to be within the previous 3 years. But through the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you still get points for your Canadian work experience within the last 10 years. So there's flexibility that exists. So please, whatever you do, don't make the decision to just become, to go underground. Don't do it. It is a dead end for you and for your family. Okay, let's get to some of the questions here. I know we've got a ton of questions. Those of you who have questions, please go ahead and post them now. I know lots of people have been just wondering what the future is going to hold. But yeah, go ahead and post your questions and let's start tackling some of them now. Okay. All right. So Nicholas says, is my postgrad and spousal open work permit extension will be affected? I'm finishing my 2-year diploma in public institution. Nicholas, your study permit will absolutely be eligible for extension. Absolutely. And as far as your spouse, they didn't speak directly to current spouses of international students, but I can't see a world, I'll be honest, where they say, no, we're no longer going to issue open work permits for accompanying spouses. That, I think, would be subject to some form of class action lawsuit. I think it's going to be effective as of January the 22nd and for all future study permits. But going forward, Nicholas, it's my view, although it hasn't been expressly stated, that international students who have spouses here with them now should be able to get those work permits extended. But if there's any change, I will let you know. And I'm going to focus all the questions that deal specifically with this announcement. Those of you who are coming to the plate a little bit late, remember Minister Miller, this guy right here, just made this announcement, and it is to drastically reduce the number of international students in Canada down to 360,000 for 2024. Could be less, could be more in 2025. We'll have to see. And also the impact on postgrad work permits. Individuals who are accompanying an international student only right now. Going forward, it's going to be only spouses of master's and PhD students, and whatever happens with negotiations with some of the in-demand educational programs, at least in-demand occupations in Canada, they may have some carve-outs. But that's the big announcement right now. All right, let's get back to some more questions here. And feel free to post anything you want. I welcome your take on this. Okay, Batman says, would the spousal open work permit measure apply to the spouses of those who is about to complete a postgrad DM? It's April 2024. I see there's very less clarity on when Mr. Mills. Yes, and that's right. We don't know for sure. We don't know exactly how this is all going to play out, but I can't see a world where people that are already here and their spouses have already been issued a spousal open work permit under the program, I'd be surprised if they're not able to continue going forward. Okay. And so Abdullah says, hello. So no postgrad work permit starting from September 2024. Nope, that's not the case. No postgrad. That's not the case at all. So no postgrad work permit starting from September 2024. No, that's not the case. It's just certain schools that they are targeting. And remember, master's and PhD programs will still have the ability to get those. And then we will see how it plays out. But generally speaking, many programs will no longer have a postgrad work permit option. And why are they doing that? Well, you can see that the reduction, people that come and study internationally in Canada, the program was always designed to be temporary with the intention that people would return. And I think that alone, the reduction of the postgrad work permit availability for programs that are not a master's, PhD, or some graduate level, which they're yet to really iron out those details, I think it's going to have a huge impact on people choosing to study. And it's going to, by that alone, is going to reduce the possibilities. But we'll see, because what other impacts are happening? Well, this is going to impact all the international student programs within the provinces, right? What are the provinces going to do? Are they going to choose to reduce those now in concert with the federal government? We just don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. And I think lots of people are asking about the impacts on the current, promise. We don't see it's going to have any impact on those. So we believe, at least I believe at this stage, that they should be grandfathered in. Oh, and then we've got some positive. Nikita says, hey, Mark, TR to PR with Outland Spouse. Just got portal and passport for finalization. Your help with free videos were so much help. Thank you. Bless. You're very welcome, Nikita. Very, very welcome. And Spider-Man, good to see you. Okay. And you're right, Batman. It is ironic to see this government invite thousands of international students to apply for a PR in 2021 and did EE draws with scores of 75, lowest in the history. It is. But understand, there was a reason they did that. They wanted to hit their levels plans, and people outside of Canada that were FSWs, their applications weren't being processed because of lockdowns at the visa offices overall. All right, here's some takeaways from Igor. He said, step 1, destroy the equilibrium and let in too many students for the country to handle, housing, labor market, and then gloriously fix it. Interesting. Good take, Igor. Good take. Okay, and anyone that have asked questions that I've already answered, I'll just skip through those. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm trying to get to questions that fit here, guys. Okay, Abdi as well. He says, when he said they need to shut down, he is referring to institutions that doesn't go under EDD or in general. No, what's going to happen is, as far as shutting down, remember, the minister has no ability to shut down any schools. that is under the jurisdiction, the provincial jurisdiction, the division of powers under the Constitution. It is the provinces that have the authority to grant DLIs, to grant charters, or whatever it might be for schools. So it's the provinces that are going to do that. But if we go back to the actual statements, the issue that they're trying to target here, if I can find it, the evil, I guess, that they're trying to target is curriculum licensing agreements where students physically attend a private college that has been licensed to deliver the curriculum of an associated public college. Okay, so that's kind of what they're focusing on here. But we'll have to see. And like I said, as details come out, I will absolutely be sharing them with you. Okay. All right. So Ali says, and this is a great question, Ali. If I've been accepted to a community college and will start on September 1st, I am eligible for a postgrad work permit. No. I think at this stage, what we can see is that if you've been accepted to a community college and will start September the 1st, that you will not be able to get a postgrad work permit. They just will not grant those. And that's pretty clear when it comes to basically the instructions that were posted at least today. Yeah, I'm just looking, trying to see here. Yeah, and so let's go back here and just look at it again, just so that we can see it together. Starting September the 1st, international students who begin a study program that is part of a curriculum licensing agreement with a part of a curriculum licensing agreement will no longer be eligible for a postgrad work permit upon graduation. So this is the limitation that they've put. Okay, so we'll see how this all plays out. Because at this stage, okay, what if it's a private school that is not associated? You know, what if it can stand on its own merits? Like, I don't know if it's just ones that have a licensing agreement. You know, maybe there are private colleges, I don't know, that do not have this type of a situation. I just don't know how the charters work in each of the provinces. So there's still a little bit of vagueness, and we'll have to see how that plays out, Ali. Joe says, go to Alberta. It's amazing here. Too cold. Really, Raul? Well, my friend, you better sort it out, Raul, because you're not going to want to go to BC. That's for sure. If that's where you're looking to study, to get a warmer climate. Because they're going to see their numbers drop. Okay. Okay. Akif says, sir, my wife applied for September intake in undergrad programs. It's already in process. So how can I apply for further process? Well, these measures will be implemented. They will be. And so if you're looking to a company on a spousal open work permit, it may not be eligible for you, and it may not be available. Remember, the government will always issue program delivery instructions. When those are released, I will be here to give you a new video on this. Excuse me. Just give me a second. I'm going to be right back. I have to get a drink. Nothing quite like stepping away from a live stream to get a glass of water. All right, now I'm less parched. So much to cover here. Okay, so yes, the program delivery instructions, once they're released, we will know exactly the timelines, when everything will be implemented, you know, which schools will be, will not have the ability to issue postgrad work permits, which programs. So hang tight on that one. How do I get a provincial attestation, and how do I get it for Ontario? Well, you'll have to wait, because the provinces have until March 31st to have the process rolled out. I suspect that most will have it right away. Okay, let's see what else we have here. And I welcome your comments, you guys. I welcome to hear what you guys have to say here. Patricia says, is a postgraduate diploma different from a master's? Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. So if my husband is taking a postgraduate diploma, I won't be approved for open work permit. It is very likely, Patricia, that that's the case. Now, when you go through here, you will see, I'm going to share once again in response to your question. This is all we have to work off of. So until the official program delivery instructions come, we won't be able to know with 100% certainty. So graduates of masters, you can see, and other short graduate level programs will soon be eligible for a 3-year work permit under current criteria. The length, they talk about that. But when it comes to spouses, you can see spouses here, the way they've talked about it, will only be available to spouses of master's and doctoral programs. If this is truly the case, and they truly have locked it in right here, then the answer would be no, right? The spouses of international students and other levels of study, including undergraduate and college, will no longer be eligible. So they haven't said postgraduate here. It would have been nice if they said including postgraduate and undergraduate, because technically speaking, postgraduate in some cases could be seen, some might define some master's programs as postgraduate, but understand, like, let's take, there's lots of programs that are not at a master's level where there's like a thesis, but it is a postgraduate kind of diploma or certificate, right? And I think that's the ones too, sometimes that they're trying to crack down on, Patricia, but we'll have to wait and see. But it is, I'll be honest, it's not looking good for an open work permit in those circumstances. Niazi over in Nanaimo, good to see you. Thanks for connecting in. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be looking for employment because of this. Yeah, so this is a classic example, Garuba. If I do a 1-year post-grad certificate program in May 2024, can my spouse get an open work permit? Well, we'll have to see how this is going to be implemented. That's a reality. We'll have to see. Ultimately, 1-year graduate certificate programs, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for a lot of people. Let's go back here. Let's go back here and let's just take a quick look at this again. So once again, in terms of open work permits, remember, starting September the 1st, international students who begin a study program, and this is September, so you would have started before that, will no longer be eligible for postgrad work permits upon graduation. Okay. And so I don't know, this is starting September 1st. So it may be possible for you, in this case, depending upon when you're applying. I don't know if you've already received your approval or if you're in the course of just starting the process, but I would seriously watch this carefully to see how it unfolds. And Vinod, this is not the question that we want to ask, right? This is what they're trying to curb. People that are choosing to take whatever the shortest program with the least tuition, this is what's caused the problem. And so all of these schools, and I shouldn't say even lowest tuition, because sometimes these schools that are being shut down, once again, the IRCC is not shutting them down. The provinces are going to have to deal with it. They're the ones that are going to be closing their doors because there isn't going to be a pathway to permanent residence in the way that people thought there was before. So I can't answer what's the shortest level of graduate program, because based on what they've described here, it may be possible for a master's program to be less than 2 years, maybe. Because it says here, graduates of master's and other short graduate level programs will soon be eligible to apply for 3-year work permits. So they're emphasizing the importance of graduate level studies and PhD as priority and less so about the undergrad stuff. All right, let's keep zipping through here. Okay, RRR says it affects students of May 2024 in private to public colleges. Well, at this stage, remember the implementation of the attestations and everything. This is the big thing. If we look at the attestations for each province, absolutely it can affect. And here's what we're looking at. IRCC will allocate a portion of the cap to each province, who will then distribute the allocations among the DLIs. This will implement as of January 22nd, 2024. So the way I look at it, the people that are going to get in first, what's going to happen is individuals who at the beginning of the year, the quotas are going to fill up really quick. So anyone who's in the process right now of applying, you need to do it immediately. You need to do it as quickly as possible, because once all of the allocations have been issued, then I suspect the province is just going to say we've only allocated so many for the spring term. maybe January, and so many for September, or so many for, if the program starts in April or May, once those allocations are issued, then they're going to, the school is only going to be able to do so many at a certain time. And once the cap is full, then you won't be able to proceed forward. Okay, let's see here. We've got lots of people asking about current. I think right now, people that are already in are going to be able to be grandfathered through to the end, and it will only affect new applications, post January 22nd, but we'll see. Okay, Anthony says, my spouse is a postgrad work permit holder. Does this affect me applying for an open work permit? Well, no, because this is only spouses of individuals on study permits. So they have said nothing about not granting open work permits for work permit holders. It's only been focused on international students. Okay, keeping going here. All right. Julio says it's unclear of why will happen to spousal open work permit for postgrad work permit holders. Can we still sponsor my spouse if I already have my postgrad work permit? At this stage, we haven't seen. Like I said, we haven't seen. But unless they choose to specifically restrict it for individuals that are here now on postgrads, I think they could. It's possible. But at this stage, we haven't seen any indication, Julio. Teak, can I refund my tuition fee? Well, that's a discussion you have to have with the schools. And once again, Hans, same thing. People that are here, I suspect will be able to continue, but I will let you know the moment I hear any confirmation. Do I think there's going to be a draw for the Canadian Experience class? No, I don't at this stage. Who knows? Maybe it's possible, but personally, I'm not holding out on any CEC draws. Let's see, we've got a ton of questions, people that are piling in here. But understand, if you've posted a question, understand that, and I'm going to go for another 15 minutes. And then I think what I might do is I may do a live Q&A just to talk about the program tonight. I have another client meeting at 1 p.m. Mountain Time here. So we're going to wrap it up in 15 minutes. But many of the questions you guys are asking are very similar to the ones that were previously asked. Okay. Okay, Ali, I think we talked about that. If you've been accepted to community college and will start on September the 1st, am I eligible for postgrad? Highly unlikely. And many of you are going to start to think, reconsider whether or not you want to study. Okay, let's see what else we have here. There's lots of questions. Reaction. So what are the chances of Portage College Calgary visa in SDS category? That I cannot answer. All I know is that, when it comes to the DLIs, even Alberta will have quotas, and there will only be certain schools that will retain their DLI status as a result of the recent changes that are being implemented. Okay. And once again, lots of people like Kanjan here is asking, will current spousal open work permit holders for those current college students be affected? I believe at this stage, we haven't heard anything different. But if an individual is here, usually what they'll do is they'll implement an intake date, like the date that it will flow forward. And so for new applications and individuals that are looking to get new spousal open work permits, I don't think it's going to work. But people that already have them, it would be a cruel, perverse process to say, now we're going to cut you off. So I would highly suspect, Kanjan, that that's not going to be the case. And that if you are on a study permit and your spouse is on a spousal open work permit, that they should be able to continue. But you know what? They can do anything that they want. And I think you guys remember Minister Miller reiterating that there's no guarantee of permanent residence for any international students in Canada. And that's been made more and more clear than ever before right now. Okay, keep zipping through here. Next question. Yeah, so Noor says, so people who are coming for postgraduate diploma won't be eligible for a postgrad work permit and only master's students eligible. That is exactly what the instructions state right now, Noor. So we will have to see if there's some carve out or if there's, based on the school that you're attending, That's another big program, another big question, because what they're trying to weed out is the schools that are really not, producing the same quality education that the public institutions are. All right, I love this one. What is going to happen to express entry? Well, if you look at the way things have played out, and understand, I was involved right from the beginning when express entry was even a thought. I was involved in working groups where we provided submissions to IRCC on the creation of express entry. And you've seen now that because of the massive numbers of foreign workers on open work permits in Canada right now, the thing that's driving up the scores are those 35 or 40 points for Canadian education, for Canadian work experience, plus in many cases 15 or 30 points for having studied in Canada. So that's that's up to a 70 point swing for someone who is a single individual, and or even a 65 if you're married, or if you've got a spouse with accompanying you on your application. So we know that those, if there's far fewer postgrad work permits being issued, well, there's going to be far fewer people that are going to be getting that Canadian work experience. And if that Canadian work experience numbers are being reduced, then it's going to result in the scores being reduced. And let's take a look, and I want you guys to pay close attention to this. And this should give hope for people outside of Canada that are looking at having a pathway forward, but just don't see any light at the end of the tunnel because of how many people are gaining all that Canadian work experience. So let's take a look at this, and I want to show you, and we'll just talk about it very briefly. So if we look at these general rounds of invitations, yes, they're super high. And why? Largely because of Canadian work experience, Canadian education, and the points awarded accordingly. Let's face it, at any point in time, they could say we're not going to award any more points for Canadian education. I don't think they'll do that, but anything is possible. And so if we go down here, I'm going to keep skipping through the generals because these are still high. This is still high. But if we go down to October here, you will see that there were large numbers, 3,000 here, that dropped it down to 504. And this one here, a fairly large number that dropped it down to 500. Well, what does that mean? Think of it this way. If you reduce the number of individuals who have Canadian experience, and let's go to the criteria. Boy, I'm extending this longer than I intended, but there's just so many people watching. We have just about 500 people. I'm going to go a little bit later. Hopefully my wife will forgive me because we have to go pick up a vehicle down that is in the repair shop, and we only have one vehicle for me, my wife, and my daughter who's teaching right now. Anyways, long story short, we've got, and then I have consults at 2:00. But if you look at these scores, you can see here the Canadian work experience. There's a whack of points, and if we go here and we look at the Canadian work experience, the points being awarded for it, official languages. Okay, you can see if you're married or common law, 35 points here. If you're single, 40 points. So let's say the numbers are truly dropped. And I know I never talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that the minister did hint at is the fact that, provinces like Ontario are going to have 50% less individuals. And if they do have 50%, a reduction of 50%, well, obviously, and postgrads are being restricted, the ability to gain these points is going to be fewer. There's going to be fewer people on labor market impact assessments, people on intercompany transfers, where the numbers are not nearly as voluminous as those on open work permit. Now, understand that just because there may be fewer postgrad work permits being issued, there's still a lot of people that are still need to work their way through the system. And so it's going to be, probably a year and a half or more before we start to see the actual impact on the rounds of invitations. But there's a lot of points that are going to be lower. And so let's say 35 or 40 points, you reduce it from here, that takes you right back down into the realm of the 469, right? And I think you guys have seen in one of the things that I talk about a lot in my, let's see if I can even find it. I think this is it. Oh, that's how I actually log in. I have my Express Entry Accelerator. The card's closed right now because I just finished doing it. But in my Express Entry Accelerator, Bran, I just revised the whole course here in December. You can actually get notified when the cart opens again, probably mid-February or so. But in here, one of the things that we talk about a lot is basically the path that you have to take in order to increase your chances of being able to get that invitation to apply. And if we're losing those points, it is going to have a direct impact on this. And it's going to drop it down to, potentially into the 460s, 470s again. And what does that mean? It means that you guys who are federal skilled workers outside of Canada, if you can hang on for a little bit, you may once again have pathways to permanent residence through express entry like the olden days when 469 points was phenomenal. And I want to show you here, you know what, I'm going to log in and I'll just show you a little sneak peek in the course because I have two videos that I love. And one of them is called the CRS case scenarios. And this is the actual course here that I'm giving you a little sneak peek into. What I did was I created some examples. I'm going to pause this. I created some examples of real individuals. First, we talked about it, and what the point thresholds are. And let me see if I can just jump through here till I get to, okay, that's Johnny No Chance. Okay, I think, is he the one I'm looking at? I think so. Okay, so this is a classic example, you guys. I call him Johnny No Chance because at the time in which I did this, Johnny had no chance. So why did he have no chance? Well, he's 29 years old. He's single. He's got a master's in programming. He's got that CLB 9, listening 8, writing, reading, speaking 7. So that's a CLB 9. 3 years of foreign work experience, but he has no work experience in Canada, no LMIA, no PNP nomination, and no relatives. So if we have him, let's see here, you can see what his score is, 469. That used to be a phenomenal score. It used to be enough. And so if you look at the rounds of invitations right now, and if people are not getting the same level of Canadian work experience and those scores are dropping, then there is a significant likelihood, and even the 15 and 30 years for study, if there's fewer people studying, it's going to open more doors for Johnny No Chance there. And I think there's a link in the description of the video below if you want to leave your name to get notified when the next cart opens. And I'm not going to get into the course because this is all about just, I talk a lot about my Express Entry Accelerated course, which I hold up against anybody out there. But anyways, you guys you can go in and check out more about it later, but I don't want to focus on that. Okay, so yeah, so that's, I believe truly that the scores are going to come down. They can't do anything but start to come down. And remember, when you look at individuals like Kuwait, like for Ukrainian individuals that are here, you look at Hong Kong, you look at Iran, all those places, you still need to have good language ability. And often for the Ukrainian applicants, that's one of the challenges. And so you may be outside of Canada and think, well, okay, if the post-grad work permits are not being issued as frequently and people are not getting those extra 40 points for Canadian work experience, well, what about, those from Ukraine and those other open work permit holders, heck, even the H-1B, the 10,000. Well, the reality is, yes, I think the H-1Bs will be positively, affected by this because they'll be able to get the work experience and maybe the scores comes down and they'll be getting in at the high 400s, but often they're older. Right. And then you have the others that come in through the special measures. They often don't have English as good. And when you're looking at the actual, let's see if we can pull up the CRS criteria. I think I've been bouncing all over the place. I've got so much going on here, you guys. If you look at the CRS criteria, let's flip back here. You'll see that there are, when it comes to overall points, age is huge. So the H-1Bers are often a little bit older. So their points they're going to be losing points for age. And then when it comes to official languages, those who are on open work permits through the special measures often don't have super high language. So it's going to really level the playing field as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the actual rounds of invitations. And so I think it's realistic to believe that the scores could be pushed down. So you can see last August, it was 496. And if we keep going down further and further, let's go to 3 here. We'll go back to 2022 when they had those strings they had all these PNPs. We're going to keep going and you guys are going to follow me along in the journey. Could they start doing CECs? Well, they could, right? They could. And you can see the scores for CECs, 462. They had a CEC at 403. Now, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in this, you guys, because these numbers back in 2021 were heavily influenced by, the COVID measures and the border closures and things like that. But, what did the world look like before the pandemic? Let's go take a look. This is kind of fun because I think we're going to resurface back to 2019. So I want to see what happened in 2019. What were the rounds of invitations? Let's take a look. This is kind of fun to look at it because I think that's the direction that we're heading back to. So no program specified draws. Do you see the rounds of invitation levels? So the last, I think, no program specified before the pandemic was March the 4th. And you can see there were large numbers with no program specified, but the scores are in the 470s. Okay. And so how do you hit 470s or even 469 here? Well, 469, I just showed you what it was in my course, this little video. Maybe I'll make this one available for free or something to people. But you can see for an individual right here, Johnny No Chance, who has the master's degree, who is maximum age at 29, who has 3 years of foreign work experience and has a CLB9 in their language ability, he's sitting at 469 points. And that is, that's this one right here. Okay, so back to December 19th. So I think that's where we're headed. And I know I took a lot of time to talk about that, but I know that's what people are asking. So this is really good news, I think, for people who are outside of Canada who, leading up to 2020, you still had to have really high human capital. A bachelor's degree alone wasn't enough. You often needed at least a bachelor's degree plus one other program to score. And so it should give people more hope. At least personally, I think so. It should. Okay. All right. Let's see what else. If we can get a couple more here. And those of you who are expressing thanks, I wish I could, highlight all of you, but it just isn't possible. And I'm trying to do everything here. So Santa, thanks. I appreciate that. And those who are asking specifically about colleges, you're going to have to wait because the provinces have to sort out what they're going to do. And this is what the minister specifically identified when he did this video. And those of you who want to, go back and watch the beginning, because this will be available as a recording. I did take a snapshot from here, but you can go to the CPAC YouTube channel, and Canada announces 2-year cap on international student visas. This isn't going to be a 2-year cap, you guys. This is going to extend. It's going to become more common. It's not going to stay the same. Okay. So go check that out. But yeah, the reality is, this is going to be more permanent. It is absolutely going to be more permanent, and we'll have to see how it plays out because the minister said he wasn't happy with how fast the provinces reacted. They took their time. So he said, fine, we have to take measures into our own hands. So we're instituting these caps. We're going to apply them to the provinces, and then the provinces will have to figure out how to divvy it up amongst their schools. And one piece of advice that I do want to give you guys, if you're looking at studying, one safe bet is to choose a public institution. Okay. So if you're coming to Lethbridge College and the University of Lethbridge, if you're going to Calgary, the University of Calgary, SAIT, the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. If you're going to Edmonton, University of Alberta, the NAIT, where my daughter's going to school right now. Those are the programs, the public institutions. Those are your first choices. And once again, you need to avoid Ontario and British Columbia. You just need to, because it's going to be harder to get those spots. You need to consider Atlantic Canada. Consider going to Dalhousie University, doing a master's program. Consider going to Manitoba, the University of Manitoba, which is my alma mater. Do a master's there. If you're looking at studying, any province, Saskatchewan, right? There are possibilities there for you. But these schools, Ontario is going to suffer a 50% reduction. And that doesn't even count how many schools are being affected, right? We don't know which ones are going to be winners and losers for sure until the provinces make those decisions. All right. Okay, Mr. Thoff says, I was about to apply for a visa this week. Now that provincial attestation is needed, do you think I will be able to get in the country for my intake? I don't know. We will have to see. One thing we do know is that the policies are being implemented, and many of them are rolling out as of today, January the 22nd. So once the program delivery instructions are released, which we traditionally we see those later in the day or the next day, the actual PDIs, because the officers need to know what this means. And this is the irony of all of this. When the government does these big announcements, like Minister Miller did here, and they release these reports, these news releases, often the actual officers who are processing don't know what the heck they're supposed to do. And so usually within a day, same day or next day, they will release program delivery instructions, which have all the details. And I can promise you guys, the moment those are released, I will pull those out and I will help you guys to understand what it really means on the ground. Because we will know, you will be able to know the case to meet. You will be able to tell if your school is really on the list or not on the list. Okay. We know that we have the DLI list right now, that I see no changes to how they share the information with you. The websites that have the list of DLIs with post-grad work permits, it's just going to be reduced significantly, but you should be able to go there and see, because it would be completely unfair for you to just have to apply and hope that your school offers post-grad work permits when we're in limbo here. But there is still, in terms of the attestations, many of the provinces haven't figured out how they're going to do this, but the minister says as of now, they're going to be rolled out. And so they've got until March to figure it out, which, okay, great. Really, the provinces need to do it this week. Figure it out this week. That's the priority. All right. Great question. Yeah. And just to reiterate, Julio says, can we still get a spousal open work permit for my spouse if I already have a postgrad? My belief is that the answer is yes. It would seem cruel and heartless to say, nope, now they all have to just go home. But ultimately, Minister Miller, he's not afraid to give bad news. Minister Fraser here behind, let's see if we can, Minister Fraser here, he didn't like bad news. All he liked was the bestower of these magical big announcements. And he liked giving good news, not bad news. But Minister Miller, look at that picture. He looks like he's got a few more gray hairs and a few more lines on his face. In his presentation today. Yeah, not an easy job. I feel for him, because to a large extent, he's just I want to show you guys this. Okay, just listen to this. I'll just show you. Just listen. Do you see the frenzy of reporters asking questions? Oh, and he cut it off at the end. He just cut it off and said, I'm out of here. There were so many questions left unanswered, and we will follow this closely to see ultimately what Minister Miller chooses to do. Okay, I'm going to try to get a couple more, and then I think there's just too many people here. I'm going to go live, I think, tonight. We'll probably shoot for about maybe 6 p.m. Mountain time. That would be 8 p.m. Eastern. I think I'm going to have Igor set this up, and we'll do another one, because I know I've got so many questions here. There's no way I can get through all of them. And my wife should be very disappointed if I don't, because this has been a complete, just a surprise. But everything comes to a halt, right? Everything comes to a halt when we start this process. And just to reiterate and wrap up, Minister Miller announced not only a reduction in the number of students, but he announced that there'd be caps. Would apply pro rata to the provinces based on population. But even then, if Ontario has, 50%, of the, Ontario and BC, I don't know how many, what do they have? Probably like 60, 70% of all the international students, they're going to be taking a big hit. So what do you do? Takeaway, consider studying in a province outside of Ontario or BC, and make sure, if you truly do want to get a postgrad work permit, the study needs to be at least at a master's degree level. And we'll see ultimately how it plays out with the program delivery instructions, but big announcements. And with the issuance of postgrad work permits, yes, those are going to be restricted to only master's degree programs, unless we see something different, master's or higher, or potentially some other postgraduate programs that are to be sorted out, and potentially areas within in-demand occupations could see postgrad work permits. But the minister says they're going to be in discussions with schools about that. And then the last piece is spousal open work permits. Yeah, you guys, no longer are those going to be available for, international students when they're in Canada. So spouses are going to have to stay home, generally speaking, subject to master's and PhD students. So that's where we're at. But there's going to be many people out of work, and there's going to be a real shift in express entry. And, you know, I'm not going to pass judgment, like I said, on whether this is a good or bad. I'm just here to tell you what it is. And then this evening, I'll have much more time to talk about, answer your specific questions, and talk about what this really means going forward, and strategies and all those kinds of things. Because literally, I had a consult right before the announcement happened. It was too early to do anything before this. So there you have it. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. And we will see all of you guys tonight. Watch on the YouTube channel, and wherever you're watching this, we will get the announcement posted that I'll be going live at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I think that will give everybody time, because that'll be 5 p.m. in BC, and people in BC really need to hear this as well. And most of them hopefully will be finished work around that time, and they can check in. So 6 p.m. Mountain Time, that's 8 p.m. Eastern. You guys can do the math, and we'll do another open scale debrief on this where we can really dive in. But I know people wanted answers now. Once again, if you're here already on a postgrad, or you're here on a study permit and your spouse is with you, my belief is that all of you that are here will be able to continue, but we'll see where it goes. All right. Thanks so much, you guys. And yeah, we'll see you this evening. Take care. Oh, and subscribe to the channel, Igor said. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll just get notified when I go live. All right. Take care.